let's get into just, again, very brief background, sort of what is low impact development for us, for this part of the world. This can vary depending on where you are in the United States and other parts of the world. A big part of low impact development, and I think this is something that sets us apart to some degree from other parts of the country, not entirely, but to some degree, we really emphasize low impact development as a land use development strategy that emphasizes the protection of on-site natural features, vegetation, soils, topography. We know from from projects that we've either built or designed on paper and then done the modeling, our native vegetation and soils are by far and away the most cost-effective stormwater management tool that we have. They're also the most effective. So, do as much as you can in that planning phase of low impact development, and this is probably one of the largest differences between conventional and low impact development. Right? Conventional, I'm a developer, I've got a project in my head, I've got a concept, and I'm going to stick that on a piece of ground. Maybe it doesn't really matter what piece of ground, wherever I can stick that project. A low impact development approach, there's much more upfront site assessment, understanding that site, and then planning with that site, with those features. Soil, how do we conserve native vegetation and topography for open space and an amenity, but also to perhaps disperse stormwater? How do we best utilize the soils on site? In a low impact development, would you necessarily build on your best infiltrating soils? Probably not. You try not to. You might be using that for infiltration and treatment. So that's a pretty big difference in a low impact development approach. Then after that, after you've done all you can in the site assessment and planning phase, then there's the fun stuff, right? There's all these integrated small-scale engineering approaches. Bioretention, perennial pavement, could have green roofs, rainwater harvesting, minimal excavation foundations, all these different approaches. And of course, today we will focus on bioretention, which is really the workhorse of a low-impact development approach. We'll show you some pictures. You can really put this stuff anywhere. We've generally thought of this at a parcel and subdivision scale. However, we know actually some of the best research on this is from this part of the world, Puget Sound region. Site and subdivision scale is necessary but not sufficient as far as protection of our receiving waters. We also have to think about the watershed scale, regional planning. So what kind of development do you put where? For example, we know from some of the research we've done in this region, that has been done in this region, that road networks and road network density has a significant impact on receiving waters. So that has to do with, where are we putting the development, how are we planning larger scale? So that's an important piece of this as well. Primary goal, this is not codified, this is not written down in the permit, but this is something we have generally adopted and is part of, it's outside I guess, the LID Technical Guidance Manual. No measurable impacts to receiving waters, and with the idea of maintaining or approximating pre-development surface flow volumes and durations. So that gets to our modeling approach. We think about volumes, but we also think about duration, which makes our flow control standards some of the most rigorous, if not the most rigorous, in the United States. So, that's, as you can imagine, hard to do downtown Seattle, right? Well, and the permit doesn't say you have to do that downtown Seattle. But essentially, that is what we are asking, and you see reflected in our flow control goals for, again, some green development, green landscape development with sensitive receiving waters. So essentially, we are in those cases often asking for managing all your water on site, essentially all your water on site. So one of the first things you have to do to implement something like that is understand your hydrology. Fortunately, we have some good research in this part of the world on our regional hydrology. This is a slide that incorporates research from Puget Sound area. It incorporates research from British Columbia and from UK. We have some similarities with UK climate. A lot of water is in our native forest, intercepted and evaporated. 40 to 50%, 50 is optimistic, 40 is a good solid number as far as what's intercepted by our native vegetation and evaporated even during the winter months. So, of course, some makes it to the ground. Our best estimate, 20 to 30% interflow, that is shallow subsurface flow, down slope, down gradient to our receiving waters. Some goes to deeper groundwater course. An important number here is very little surface flow. And the estimate is, 1% or less, very little. Very different than the desert, right? So that's our native hydrology. Then when we develop, of course, things change. We lose some of that vegetation, we replace it with hardened surfaces. And best estimate for kind of a suburban landscape, now 20, 30% to surface flow. And so this is the crux of the matter, right? We have a lot more surface flow reaching our receiving waters more quickly, so more volume, more quickly, with a bunch of stuff in it. And for years, we sort of thought that, the big deal as far as disturbing receiving waters, loss of aquatic biota and all that, was change in the physical habitat because of that more water reaching those streams more rapidly. Stream scour, losing habitat, sedimentation, all that sort of thing. What we're finding now, and particularly over the last 5 years, is it's very likely that the chemistry of that water is also having a very dramatic effect on our aquatic biota. And that's very recent research with NOAA, and I was doing that with WSU and NOAA when I was there, and that research continues, and very interesting findings coming out of that stuff. So now measuring impacts to aquatic biota at a molecular level, and finding significant sublethal effects from stormwater contaminants. And it's a very complex mix of contaminants, and exactly what's going on, we don't know yet. But we do know at this point now that chemistry of stormwater can dramatically affect aquatic biota. And if it doesn't outright kill them, which it can, so we've documented that, mortality from stormwater, highway stormwater runoff, but also a whole suite of sublethal effects, which eventually kills the fish. Some objectives, again, kind of wrapping up the introduction here on low impact development. We've already talked a little bit about protecting, restoring native soils and vegetation as a primary objective for low impact development. Reducing the development envelope. We live in a growth management region. The work we've done around low impact development has often been around small lots because we've been trying to reduce sprawl, right? More increased density, less sprawl. And so we've done a lot of work around how do you reduce the development envelope overall and still implement low impact development within that smaller development envelope. So makes it pretty interesting. And of course, reducing impervious surfaces and eliminating effective impervious area. Okay, before we go on, I need a definition of effective impervious area. That's it. Total impervious area. Then there's the stuff that's actually connected to receiving water, right? So that could be, if that water goes into a pond, and then there's a release out of that pond to receive, that's all the water that goes into that pond. Well, of course you can get some infiltration and attenuation and all that, but that stuff's connected. The really important part of low impact development is disconnection. You may not be able to get, dramatic reduction in total impervious area, but boy, in a low impact development approach, you're working hard for disconnecting that impervious area, making it not effective. So, great, thanks. That was very good. Managing stormwater as close to its origin as possible. That's another primary objective. Small-scale distributed controls rather than centralized. And then this is one of the big advantages to low-impact development is being able to integrate the stormwater management controls into the project as an amenity. So you can actually have kind of serve dual purpose.